Okay. So now we got the Motorized Infantry. Shoot, I don't know how to pronounce these guys. If memory serves, I think it's something like sabotage in Russian. We have a pair of VBSSs and a pair of what I'm guessing are suppressed AK-12s or AK-15s. It's like, shoot, I forget the name of that word. It's like actually no, I don't think it's sabotage. I think it's something like infiltrators or something similar in Russian. And they do have a laser. Like you can throw them out of a perfectly good airplane if you so wish. And you can, or you can give them an RPG-30, which notably cannot be intercepted by APS. So, but they lose some of their vision and some of their stealth too, and the ability to laze. So, it's kind of interesting. Spetsnaz GRU, which I'm guessing this is... I'm actually not sure what this is. These guys all have suppressed weapons. Probably something to the effect of probably something to the effect of ambush troops, I think. Or not necessarily ambush troops. How would you use these? I don't know. I'd have to think about that. You got 3 shots for the man pads, 3 RPG-28s, or you can have 6 RPG-28s, or 6 shots for the man pads. So I guess it would just depend on what you want. Having the balanced option may not necessarily be bad. So, the BRDM-3, which is the BRDM is basically a series of Russian armored cars for use for reconnaissance, decent vision, bit of stealth. You can up armor it to remove the vehicle's ability to swim, even though you can still use the trim vane, which I find kind of amusing. Or you've got BTR-82, BTR-A or BTR-AT turret, which appears to have some extra optics in it. Or you got the PRP-5 turret, which, oh my, what on earth is that in the back? I have no idea what all that stuff is on the back. And then this basically transforms the vehicle into again, like an artillery observation vehicle, with a laser designator and better view range, but you only get a cord. Okay. Having the AT module might be best. If memory serves, this is the specialization with the most points dedicated, or the Russian specialization with the most points dedicated to recon. So, the UAZ, I'm not going to try and pronounce that. We do have a 14.5 millimeter machine gun, 14.5 millimeter heavy machine gun, and a PKP, which the passenger's just holding. Okay, decent performance, all things considered. You can exchange that for a recoilless rifle. Okay, I'm guessing that's the anti-armor round, and it is destroyed by APS. And this is the anti-infantry. Although you can use that against infantry as well. Alright, well that's kind of interesting. And then you do have a faggot launcher. The 9M111M. I'm honestly curious how many times it's going to take me to say that before apparently YouTube decides to pitch a fit and do something to my channel. Also, it's nice. That's kind of nice. You've got a windshield and you got the sides which fold down. But yes, I'm honestly wondering how many times I can I can talk about this Russian missile system using its own name before YouTube pitches a fit. So, AM-45. Again, it's a high-speed scout vehicle. And the faggot does give you some extra view range, all things considered. So it's like the Sarmat in the VDV specialization. You can airdrop this, though. Actually, for that matter, you can airdrop the Sarmat. The Mets is the same cost. Range. This is slightly longer range, but much less pen. And I think they do the same damage. They do. And they basically got the same speed, mobility, armor protection, health, you name it. It's just that this thing also has a PKP too, which is kind of nice. Honestly, between the two, I'm more inclined to go with the UAZ because the stats are pretty much exactly the same up here, but you have an extra PKP for self-defense. The launcher is a slightly shorter range, but it has much less anti-armor capability. I suppose you could combine them. And then you have the Corsair. This is basically a Russian quasi-knockoff of the RQ-7. So if it looks familiar, that's why. You do have better sensors. To give you a slightly boosted visual range. You can mount a couple thermobaric. I think that's basically. Oh well, no, it says Conquer, so that's like what, a thermobaric version of the Conquers. Or mount a couple of these, if you're so inclined. I'm not sure why you'd want to mount something like that on a drone, but you have the option, I guess. And then we have infantry, and you have a lot of options here. So we've got AGS-17s, which, I'm actually wondering, how do these things compare to the AGS-30s? 1.5, 20, 10, 40, 30, 1.5. 1.5, 20, 10, 40, 30. They don't. They're basically exactly the same. Okay. Okay, though, so why make a distinction between the two? Oh well. So I've got a pair of those. The AGS-17 is the older of the two. AGS-30 is more modern. And then you've got your standard regular motor rifles. So what? I'm guessing the guy with the ball cap and the SVD is supposed to be in charge. Some AK-74Ms, GP-34s, a PKP, an SVD, and then you have an RPG-7. So again, basic motor rifles, or basic motor rifle infantry from the looks of it. And this is your, I'm guessing something akin to like your weapons squad for motor rifles. Oh, they have their METS launchers on their shoulders. Okay. So by having two launchers, that means you can engage two separate targets, and possibly the same target twice at the same time, like with two separate missiles, possibly to overwhelm APS systems. Just it's just thought. You do have a GP-34. And then you have the Conkers. So, or not Conkers, you have Cornet, rather. And it's regular Cornet. You do have an option for the Cornet M. Makes the launcher more expensive, and it... No, it doesn't change the picture. But it does make the launcher more expensive, but... Or it makes the unit more expensive, but it also makes the... It also has better performance, so... And then you have an Igla, two Iglas specifically, which is kind of interesting. And what's that, 6 missiles? I think that's 6. And then you have SSO, which roughly translates to basically special forces. And I'm guessing these are assault infantry. So... thermobaric rocket launcher, or flashbangs, and then you do have a standoff option, including Cornet. All right, so you have lots of ATGMs here. Noted. You have fancy PKP. You have a sniper rifle, just straight up has a sniper rifle. And again, you have Cornet. With, how many missiles is that? 8? Although, to be fair, this does appear to be the, it's not the anti-armor version. It's like the anti-infantry version. High explosive, thermobaric, I'm not sure which. It's got a lot of penetration with thermobaric, so I'm guessing it's a conventional HE version of the Cornet. Alright, well hang on, go through this. What's the stats for this? I can't remember the designations off the top of my head. I'd have to look that up to know if that's the HE version of the Cornet. It's definitely not the armor piercing. 9M133 PM2 versus 9M133 M2. Alright. That's notable. And then you have vehicles, and you only really have 2 options. You got a BTR-82, or BTR-82A, which you can up armor, which does, again, remove its ability to swim. And then you have the BTR-82. Oh! Okay. That's certainly an interesting turret, and you get Conquer's M. Alright. Is that supposed to be unmanned? Okay, well that's certainly, again, that's certainly interesting. And then you have the K-16, and this thing is big. Like, hang on, for example. That's an LAV. That's a Striker. It's like ACV big, which itself is basically like I mean, the ACV is bigger than the AAVP. Good grief. Which itself is basically like Boxer big. So, and it is amphibious. So, it looks like it's got the same cord turret from the B-10. B-10? K-10? B-10. Okay. What do we got here? Well, you've got a boomerang module, which gives you 2A 30mm autocannon and cornets. So, you can still swim. You can up armor it, which adds some extra plating to the front, mostly. Not sure what it does to the sides. Oh no, it does add some extra plating to the sides as well. You can add an active protection system. I forgot. Hang on. That also has an AFCAT. So what, is it the same basic principle? And that you have these tubes which fire out, which, I mean, okay, if some of these fire, you're taking out your mirrors. Absolutely. Then again, I suppose that's better than the vehicle exploding. Also, it looks like visibility from that driver's hatch would be interesting. And then you could just go with the up armor entirely if you want something that is not too expensive. To be fair, that's not that bad for what you get for it. So, I mean, compare that to a contemporary would be like the Striker ICV with the Surratt and the Dragoon. Comes in at 105. But you don't get missiles. If you wanted to do that, that's 120 and you do get missiles. But you don't get the autocannon. So, yeah, that's fairly the price isn't too bad. Compared to this, you're like 5 points cheaper. Although that is a wheeled system, so it's going to have better mobility. And then for support, we have... What do we have? We have the Grad. I almost said we had the BM-21 Grad. I don't necessarily think we have Grads that old, but we do have Grads. 150. Okay. You also have smoke warheads. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's going to be interesting for laying down a pretty thick patch of smoke. Which, to be fair, could be useful if you're trying to get things like assault infantry close to a target. Lay down smoke right in front of the target, move the assault infantry through the smoke. Basic high explosive, then you have cluster. Then you have incendiary, which, you know, fire. So... Although I think I'd be more inclined to just take high explosive. And then you have the Smirch BM-30. I'm not sure what says 9K58. I'm not entirely versed on my Russian mobile rocket launchers. That's kind of interesting. I'm guessing that's like a manual aiming device. The rockets are pretty long range. They hit pretty hard. They're not quite as long ranged as the Gimlers, I don't think. Like, yeah, these have slight... Well, these aren't Gimlers, but these do have slightly slightly longer range, but they don't have the same damage or the same blast radius, which does make sense because these are a smaller diameter rocket, 227 millimeters versus 300 millimeters. So you also have an option for regular cluster. Because apparently that's the thing. You have an option for guided HE, which gives you extra range. And better dispersion, even though you do have extra range, so that's a point. And then you have, for some reason, guided cluster. I'm not entirely sure why. Well, that changes it to the tornado system, which is accurate. Which is correct, rather. Okay. And then we have the OSA, which is amphibious, and in fact, I'm pretty sure you can see the covers for, like, I believe those are water jets right there. And this is basically a surface-to-air missile system with radar. It's decent. It can be a bane for helicopters, I imagine. However, this requires it to be static. You can do that, which doesn't do much to the missile, although it does give it the ability to engage. It doesn't do much to the surface-to-air missile launcher, but does give it the ability to target missiles. And they're slightly faster. And slightly longer ranged. But most importantly, you can fire that on the move. So, whatever that thing is up there. Huh, that's about the only difference. Alright. And then you have the S-300. With long-range missiles that can engage other missiles. Wow, that's taking a long time to rise into position. Come on. Almost there. Does it actually take this long for the system to rise into position in real life? I mean, I imagine a lot of the animations for, like, the missiles, the TELs, erecting are sped up, but that took a while. And then you have the upgraded missile with better range. That's about it. Although 250 points, that's kind of steep. So, there it goes again. I mean, like, they already didn't take that long to erect its launchers. Yeah, no, that's moving much faster. Okay, well, that's weird. And then you have the Touch-U, which, yes, there is actually a weapon system in here. There it is. This is a ballistic missile. You have decent range, blast radius, dispersion. Can be intercepted and shot down. Okay, hang on, wait a second. I've got to look at these. It's worth noting that the Russians developed what could best be described as strategic air defense systems, primarily because they did not have confidence that they could develop small enough electronics that were good enough to compete with what the West could produce, and on a large enough scale as the West could. Miniaturized electronics are useful in things like aircraft and air-to-air missiles. And this, combined with the fact that the West A, liked air power, and B, knew how to use it very well, scared the utter crap out of the Soviets. And thus drove the Soviets to develop things like a very complex, multi-layered air defense system, consisting of things literally ranging from simple systems like having, like, the Strela 10, which I'm kind of surprised we didn't get to see one of those on a BRDM-2 chassis at some point, all the way to things like the OSA, and then even to strategic, quote-unquote, systems like the S-300. The air defense system was literally layered by unit, so it went all the way from Army/Corps level down to even platoon level. You do have a cluster warhead. To be fair, if you drop the conventional version on someone's head, they're probably going to notice. And they're probably not going to be very happy. 9M79-1F. 9M79-1K. So the K is the cluster, and the F is the conventional. And then you have your basic Ural truck. Ural 4320. Ural, I don't know. Why is there a window over here? Does that do anything, or is that just like... I don't know. A Ural 4320 with You can armor it. Oh. Well, that's interesting. It's literally just an armored box that someone erected in the truck bed. It's slightly tougher. And you can carry slightly fewer. And you can carry half as many supplies. I'm sorry, that's funny. I kind of like that. And you aren't armed, even though you should have a hatch up here that looks like it should be allow you to accept a machine gun. But it's ridiculous. I like that. Someone just erected an armored box inside the truck. And there's like 10 seats. You can fit 16 guys in there, so I don't know, the other 6 are gonna have to cram. And then you have the patented Russian pastime of sticking an anti-aircraft gun onto pretty much any vehicle large or pretty much any surface that is large and flat enough to take one. Such as a truck bed, which is why we have this thing right here. You can up armor it. I am not at all sure how the driver's supposed to see out of that, but hey, you can up armor it apparently. This looks like ad hoc armor, which just makes this even funnier for me. Why is there this big, like, plate between the cab and the back of the truck? I don't know. You can go with an igloo-mounted version for basic air defense. Or, if you wanted to, you can go with a 57mm autocannon. Which, granted, does a lot of damage. Not a lot of damage, but does a lot of pen. Okay. And is useful against helicopters out to a pretty decent range. I mean, yes, the Igla is also useful against fixed-wing aircraft. Or not the Igla, but the ZU-23-2 is also useful against fixed-wing aircraft. I guess you could go with the S60 if you wanted something that is slightly that's geared more towards a more general purpose use rather than something that is dedicated anti-aircraft. What's that guy in the middle doing? What's his job? To aim it? Don't know. But yes, the Russians did actually develop large caliber 57mm anti-aircraft guns in the early 1950s, late 1940s. Predominantly, they were supposed to be basically something like next generation ship-mounted anti-aircraft guns to replace the 37mm systems that the Soviets used during World War II. Of course, very quickly, things like guided missile technology soon rendered gun-based air defense systems largely obsolete. Well, that and just the ever-increasing performance of jet aircraft also didn't particularly help. It didn't particularly help that with jet aircraft being so fast, for a variety of gun systems, if you wanted to lead the target enough to be able to hit it and it's heading towards you, by the time it comes within gun's range, you would need to point the gun behind you to actually hit it. And so you're all 5323, and we do have an armored troop transport option, which is not, unfortunately, just someone erecting a an armored cab in the truck bed. So. And next we have helicopter. This is probably going to run for a while. This is a reconnaissance version, I believe, of the Mi-24. I'm a little bit fuzzy on that. 4-barrel 50 caliber rotary. 4-barrel 50 caliber rotary cannon. So. Inner pylons. You can go with nothing if you so desire, and you just want a cheap helicopter for reconnaissance. It's got decent range. Although if you want something that can do some proper air-to-ground work, you can also go with just a bunch of rockets. If you do want to increase the helicopter's price by like 2/3. It does have a laser designator though, so I guess that counts for something. You know, actually having the idea of having a cheap aircraft with a laser designator isn't necessarily a bad one. It is still kind of tough, and although the gun isn't particularly impressive. You can mount a couple of autocannons to try and alleviate that. It does also appear to have a troop compartment, but, well, no, it looks like there's something in there blocking the way. Huh. Unless that's supposed to be like more surveillance equipment. Excuse me. So. Alright. Mi-24P. Middle pylons for those, or outer pylons for those. Or you can go with more of those, or you can go with R60s if you're so inclined, which would be an interesting option. I suppose if you wanted some form of anti-aircraft. It's like 75 versus 130 base. Or you could just go with some rockets. And some basic AT missiles. Huh. Having like 8 of those might not be bad if you wanted, again, what is apparently a fairly basic attack helicopter that isn't super expensive. So. And it can transport troops, if you're so inclined. I do kind of like the black paint job. Wait, no, one button. Mi-24VP. You know, I'd have to look at the different Hind variants again. 4 of those. 4 of those, and they just got like an igla hanging off the bottom. Or you can go, I mean, you can either go with a machine gun, or you can go with an autocannon, so. That's 210. That's honestly not that much more expensive for what is, for all intents and purposes, the same loadout. 30, 50, 80, so that's like what? 130 base? Isn't this like 130? Isn't this 130 base as well? 50. Yeah, that's a 130 base as well. Okay, so it is actually more expensive. Still, that's not too much for a attack helicopter. Then you have the Mi-28N. You can mount a sensor mast. 16 or 8 iglas. I'm not sure why you will need 8 iglas, but you do have the option. S13s, iglas. Huh. Okay. And then the inner pylons. Personally, I prefer the S80s because you just have more of them, but... Although, if you did really want to have a bunch of these, you could do that easily enough. And then they have a version of the Mi-8 with a 50 cal. That this poor guy in the middle is like squeezed in between the two pilots to use. Alright. Where you have some autocannons or more rockets, if you're so inclined. And then we have fixed-wing aircraft. MiG-29 SMT. What do we have? Four R-73s and 2 R-37 ERs. Alright. R-77s, S-8s, or FAB 500s. Smart bombs, or parafuel tanks if you want to increase the loiter time. Well, double the loiter time, rather. Middle pylons, R-77s, cluster bombs, smart bombs. You get clusters? Yeah, you do get clusters. R-60s. Okay, so... I mean, you do get options for an R-77. Over here. For what is effectively a very, very basic air-to-air platform. Which, to be fair, does have good range. Good view range. Or I suppose you could kit it out something like, kind of like this. As having, or as a strike platform. Kind of expensive for a strike platform, in all honesty. And it doesn't have a laser designator, so all of these... Well, hang on. Or you could kit it out something like that. It's still pretty expensive for what it is. Not much. Are these thermobaric bombs technically considered? No, they're not considered high drag. Okay. You don't have much in the way of options for this thing. I'm guessing this is supposed to be a relatively basic platform. Then you have the SU-24M2 with 38. Wow, that's a lot. Are those supposed to be, like the thermal barracks? I can't remember. No, the ODAB is the thermal barracks. So you've got 38 mini bombs. That certainly is, well, a lot. Although if you have 38... Huh. Oh no, there's appears to be one along the center line. Yeah, no, yeah, no, I see how they're organized. You could have 14 on the bottom. You'd otherwise have 18 if you could. Or you could have 6 FAB 250s. The inner pylons could also have 6 FAB 250s. The outer pylons could have 4 FAB 250s. For a total of 16. To turn it into an interesting bomber. Those are basically like 500-pound bombs. Or FAB 250s with retardation kits. If you are so inclined to have them act like a bomber. Or FAB 500s. FAB 500s, which I believe are roughly equivalent to about 1,000-pound bombs. RBK 250, RBK 500, or... So you can basically turn this thing into an interesting bomber. Alright. Thermal barracks, cluster... Other type of cluster, or retarded 500-pounders. Alright. That's kind of interesting. The outer pylons, you have limited air-to-air options. It's literally limited to R60s. I'm honestly not sure whether or not, like, I'm not sure if it would be worth it. Those are basically like man pads. I'm not really sure what you could use it against. Like, what's the hit points of a drone? 10? I'm pretty sure a drone would be able to survive getting hit with an R60. So, just throw on more retarded bombs, I guess. Anyway, so that's basically a bomber. So, How are these two different? Huh. Oh well. And then you have the SU-30MP, which is a dedicated, nuts. Dedicated anti-radiation platform. Or you can have a pair of those for some strike. Or 2 fuel tanks while still having an anti-radiation missile. If you wanted 5 minutes of loiter time. Did this thing have an option for fuel tanks? It did. Huh. Why would you do fuel tanks on what is effectively a mini bomber? I mean, I imagine you'd call it in, have it drop the bombs, and then have it get the heck out of there, but... Okay. Anti-radiation, air to ground, and then you just... Or you just have a variety of rockets. So... Oh, the effective range is slightly shorter than what, than the harm. That's interesting. Then you have the SU-25T, which, if memory serves, the T variant never actually got off the ground. It was used more like a, I think it was supposed to be a prototype for a dedicated anti-tank version of the SU-25. 30mm autocannon, which is in the nose, I think. Right there. And you've got 2 of these cruise missiles, a bunch of these Vicars, which are anti-tank missiles, and then 4 R-73s. 4? I'm sure you need 4, but okay. Extra fuel tanks, extra anti-radiation missiles, which, if I'm not mistaken, makes this about the only specialization I know of where you can have 2 separate aircraft with anti-radiation missiles on them. You have Vicars, or 40 S8s. Vicars. Or just 4 of those. Or lots of rockets. Air to ground, rockets. You could have more rockets. If you were so inclined. Actually, you know what? I'll do this. And then the outers. If you want, again, even more rockets. I think you can get up like 160 S8s. Or you have an option for ECM pods. Huh. Oh, and it does have a laser designator. Okay. I'm guessing that's what that is at the front. Middle pylons. You have 4 of these, which are laser designated. Air-to-ground missiles. Alright. Which is certainly interesting. You have options for R-77s. I'm not sure why, but you do. But sure, go for it, I guess. If you're so inclined. All of these are the same cost. 90, so that's like 220 versus So what's that, 125 for the base platform? Yeah, I'm sorry, but the SU-25 is just a really squat aircraft. Anyway, well, oh wait, no, oh wait, you also have sensors, which can boost your, I'm not sure why you would need to see that far, but you can do it, for some reason. A radar pod. Alright. So that is the motor rifles. Next is the coastal